Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There it is, so you don't miss any of our football content this season. It has been, if I might say, fantastic. Okay, here we go on a Sunday. Buffalo 30, Kansas City 21 in the epic best rivalry in the NFL. John Middlekauff, former NFL scout with the Philadelphia Eagles, is joining us. So I'll start with this, and I've said this for the last couple of weeks. This team's the best equipped to beat Kansas City. First of all, they have their best running game with James Cook, best running back they've had. I think they have an interesting group of receivers, and they now have two tight ends, although Kincaid banged up. But, Amari Cooper made several nice plays today. They've got the slot guy. We know they're going to be well coached defensively because of Sean McDermott. And as I watched this game, I thought Kansas City would win because there was so much talk of injuries to Buffalo receivers, but, most of them showed up and played. And my take is we all kind of knew Buffalo was going to win one of these games. And I think this Buffalo team at home, I kind of felt like this team can beat anybody, including KC.
Listen, I think we talk about the Chiefs owning them because they beat them in the playoffs last year and then a couple years ago in that 13-second game. The Bills have now beat them 3 straight regular seasons. Now, 2 of those, I think, back-to-back years have been in Buffalo. Definitely 2 of the 3 of them.
Yeah.
So, they play well against them. There's no disputing. I'm sure we'll get into Lamar later. Lamar against the Chiefs looked like a different player. Josh Allen has played really, really well against the Chiefs, regular season and in the playoffs. I mean, today, is this game really as close if he doesn't make that disastrous decision on that 4th down where he just threw that ball up and it led to a Chiefs touchdown, which
that's right.
They struggle to score. I mean, so he doesn't turn it over right there. Let's say they kick a field goal. I mean, do they have 21 points at the end of the day? I mean, this is a team that struggles to score points, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's a problem. Now, playoff games look like this, and they were 9-0. And their margin for victory in a lot of these games are coming down but that's how a lot of playoff games, they're going to be very equipped and because they're coaching, because they're quarterback. But listen, Buffalo and maybe it's Pittsburgh now more than the Ravens. These games, it's there for the taking. It is wide open. Can we say that? It's wide open in the AFC.
Yeah, and I think, it's funny watching. When I look at Josh Allen, nobody thinks Brady was the most talented quarterback. We all know Marino was more talented. Tom gets 7 rings. Marino gets none. And Dan had a great coach in Don Shula. So we know that winning Super Bowls is not just on talent. But if you're asking me the most talented quarterback I've ever seen, that last touchdown round by Josh Allen, there's not 3-4 quarterbacks ever. Maybe Steve Young makes that. I don't know if Mahomes can run over 2 defenders at the goal line. Josh is about size, arm, ad-libbing, pocket. With Lamar, he loses in the playoffs, and we're like, he's a different quarterback. We don't say that with Josh. It's like, he threw for 400 yards and came up short. I'm watching him today. He had one really terrible throw. Mahomes had a bad pick early. It's like, I guess Marino, John Elway, Josh Allen, Montana and Brady have the rings. I don't think they're the most talented quarterbacks. They had 2 of the best coaches. I think Josh is the MVP. There's just nothing he doesn't have a comp to me.
Well, think about this of the internet era. I mean, Brady's the best quarterback of all time, and Peyton Manning's the top 5 quarterback of all time, and neither one was the most talented quarterback of their era. That was Aaron Rodgers. Right. But he wouldn't rank ahead of either guy. I think, John Elway forever was like the perfect player because he could move. Yeah. And I think Josh Allen has entered into that because part of the way they also checked all the boxes, right? Work ethic, leader of the team, teammates loved him. Monday through Saturday was fantastic. I said it coming into this season and I stand by it. I think he's the 2nd best quarterback in the NFL. And obviously, a lot of people come at you like, well, Lamar's because he's having a better season up until today than he was last year when he won the MVP. Well, part of it last year was an awful MVP class. And listen, Lamar's also, I don't know, one of the greatest quarterbacks I've ever seen. So, but the one thing that he still leaves to be desired is playing really well in the lights are the brightest those first couple weeks in January.
Well, I mean, that
is not a question with Josh. He's been dominant in the playoffs.
If you look at Lamar against Kansas City and Pittsburgh, he's bad. His passer rating is like 66. Josh is never bad. I mean, he'll have a bad Sunday, but I kind of looked at this game, and it goes to show, and we know this in the Super Bowl last several years. Defense, as good as Spag's defense is, when Josh Allen is running out in the end and running over guys, it just doesn't matter what the scheme is. The great ones, and Josh is an all-timer. Elway had at one point, I don't know what he ended with, like 44 game-winning drives in the fourth. He played some of the best defenses, the great defensive coordinators. You know, you couldn't stop Kobe or MJ or LeBron when they wanted it. I just look at Josh, and he's a scheme buster. If he's got the right components, there's not much you can do.
Well, he's Cam Newton as a runner because of his power and his size, but he's such a dominant passer. I mean, I think he has a chance. I mean, he's got a long runway the rest of his career to go down as one of the better players of all time. Now, you get to find, in football, like in most pro sports, how you do in the playoffs. And, it's not, he hasn't lost them games. I mean, their defense has obviously let them down in some playoff games, but the pretty good opportunity this year, right? Like, Pittsburgh Steelers aren't scoring many touchdowns. The Ravens have a lot of flaws. They just beat the Chiefs. Now, home field advantage is very, very big for Buffalo. I mean, they had it last year and they blew it to Kansas City, but they were the favorite in that game. Now, the Chiefs get the Panthers next week. So they still have a one-game cushion on the Bills. But think about this. You live back in the Northeast for a lot of the Brady era. The Bills, I would say, of the internet age, before Josh got there, were mainly a joke. I mean, they were really, really bad. You could look at him a little bit like Mahomes is one of the greatest players I've ever seen in any sport. I'm not diminishing anything he's done, but he did take over a team that was winning 10, 11 games. He just took them to 13, 14 in Super Bowls.
Right.
Josh Allen arrived. This team was a joke. It was an embarrassment. So it was, you get more credit. I'm not saying like just as an individual in a vacuum, like that's really, really impressive what he's done. Same with Sean McDermott elevating this franchise. Because they're like, obviously the Chiefs are much more accomplished, but in terms of rest of the league, how many, we talk about the Ravens, we hold them to such high regard, or the Pittsburgh Steelers haven't won a playoff game in close to a decade. I mean, look at the Bills' success. They are dominating. They're a shoo-in for their division every year. And honestly, they're a coin flip to like, are they going to be the 1 or 2 seed every year?
When all your marketing team does is put out fires, they burn out fast. Sifting through leads, creating content for infinite channels, endlessly searching for disparate performances, KPIs, takes a toll. But with HubSpot, you can stop team burnout in its tracks. Plus, your team can achieve their best results without breaking a sweat. With HubSpot's collection of AI tools, Breeze, you can pinpoint the best leads possible, capture prospects' attention with click-worthy content, and access all your company's data in one place. No sifting through tabs necessary. It's all waiting for your team in HubSpot. Keep your marketers cool. Make your campaign results hotter than ever. Visit HubSpot.com/marketers to learn more. Well, yeah, I mean, and what if Allen gets drafted by the Chiefs and Mahomes goes to the Bills? A prime example this year, and we'll get to this later, is Bo Nix. Bo Nix has torn it up. Bo Nix now has 4 games completing over 70%, no picks, 2 touchdowns. That's tied for the greatest rookie season accomplishment ever. Well, a huge component to that, about 75% of that, is Sean Payton. I mean, Caleb Williams with a defensive coach and a defensive culture, he's more talented than Bo Nix. So I think, but I will say this. I don't think anybody holds it over the head of Josh Allen. I think we all know Mahomes is great, and Andy's helped a lot. And I think we all know Josh Allen's great, and he doesn't have Andy Reid. And I think Sean McDermott's terrific. And I really do. I think Sean McDermott, I've compared him, you may not remember this much, Chuck Knox, who was great everywhere he was at. He was great in Seattle, Buffalo, Rams, won everywhere, just not the postseason. But he was meticulous in his details. So Chuck Knox would come into your organization, John, and it was like Marty Schottenheimer. He would just clean it up. Yeah. Just overnight, would clean it up. He was like the janitor with a headset. Like he immediately, your special teams got good, your defense got good, you didn't turn the ball over. Then Schottenheimer and Chuck Knox, and a little bit Sean McDermott get into the playoffs, and they get outworked. They get schemed by a great offensive coach. It can be a Bill Walsh, whoever it is. And I kind of feel McDermott is his generation's Chuck Knox. Great coach, attention to detail, tough, Teams are resilient, always in the big games. But Chuck Knox, Marty Schottenheimer, you're always like, they get a little conservative in the postseason. And I think that's a fair criticism of McDermott, but I'll defend him forever. He's a hell of a coach.
Yeah. Listen, I've known him since I worked for the Eagles. He's a tightly wound, very disciplined individual. I bet if you looked at his breakfast and lunch orders for the last 15 years, they have probably been very similar. But Nick Saban's had the same breakfast for 25 years. I mean, these guys, they're very militaristic with their actions. I do think Sean looks like he's eased up a little bit. And let's face it, he made a move, a year and a half ago that has paid dividends of the Dorsey Joe Brady thing. I mean, I think the AFC, like this Chiefs team, now they do get Pacheco back, which is going to help, but Kareem Hunt's been good for them.
Yeah.
Just offensively, that Worthy's a 170-pound rookie. Like, he's going to be a lot better in a year or two than he is now. And Travis, let's face it, like the guy that we saw in those playoffs last year, which was the Hall of Fame dominant version, I think it's fair to go, does that guy still have it in him for this stretch run? Maybe he does, but maybe he doesn't. And I think if the Bills are healthy on offense, because you add Coleman, the rookie, you add Amari Cooper, if Kincaid's healthy, their running game clearly is a lot better. I mean, you've been hammering this all, that balance of their team, control the clock. I mean, at one point in time, headed in the fourth quarter, it was basically a 1-to-1 ratio of time of possession. It was like these two teams were equal, which the Bills couldn't play that style, I felt like 2 years ago, of what Andy Reid has morphed himself into because he's had to. Like they said today on the broadcast, Kareem Hunt, since he showed up, the only guy in the league that had more carries than Kareem Hunt was Derrick Henry. Andy Reid's known for passing it too much. He brings his old buddy off the street because he has no choice. That their passing game, that their offensive line and pass protection is not great. And the one thing I would say, Mahomes has some historic like runs, like individual runs, but he's not as like dynamic of a runner as Josh.
No.
And that's an element. Remember, Josh last year in the playoffs was awesome against the Chiefs. Today, like he's given them more fits as a runner than Lamar has, which is somewhat ironic, right? I mean, that playoff game last year, it's like, Lamar, take off, run around. The Chiefs are vulnerable that way because their DBs, while great cover guys, they're not exactly, Cam Chancellor's back there. Josh runs right through them.
Yeah. By the way, the Bills, more total yards, first down, time of possession, not necessarily close by the end of the game. They came out more aggressive. I think, I think you started this off by saying Buffalo does beat Kansas City, not in late January and February, right? Like that's where we judge you. But if you said right now, in the last 5 years, who's the best team in the league, we would all say Kansas City. Who's second best? We would probably have to say San Francisco and Buffalo. And by the way, neither has a ring. It's a little Phil Mickelson in Tiger's prime. It's a little Sacramento Kings in the Lakers, Kobe and Shaq. So I think I kind of felt good the Bills winning today. It's like, guys, this is a really great team. They're the AFC San Francisco. The difference is the one area they've always been great is quarterback. There have been other issues. The O-line, the secondary in a couple of these matchups has been banged up. The receiving core is a little banged up today, but they go on to win. And
I think that Amari Cooper move for them just balances them out a little bit too, because it felt like they had become more run heavy. And now, Amari's, battling through a little wrist injury, had an awesome catch over the top. Shakir, the Boise State kid's awesome over the middle. Coleman's just a big body red zone target. Their tight end, when healthy, is obviously a good player. And then the Josh running it. Like the Bills, like their offense is pretty complete if everyone's healthy, which is obviously the big question for any NFL team. And their defense, like you said, well coached, and their pass rush is good. Like they have good pass rushers.
So Brady dominated Peyton Manning in the early years of their rivalry. And then at the end, Peyton did pretty well. And I kind of feel like
it flipped a little bit, didn't it?
It flipped. And I'm thinking to myself, you start looking at that, you look at that Buffalo roster and you're like, their defense isn't as good as Kansas City, but shit, Buffalo's got weapons. I mean, they got number one receivers, 2 tight ends, 3 receivers I like. It's like, are we going to get a little flip of the script? And this is generally how it works. Maybe not in golf or tennis where a Djokovic can dominate, guys get into their prime. But, Brady at the end, Peyton at Indy, Peyton goes to Denver. You're like, yeah, he's got better players.
I would say the one thing with these AFC teams, probably more than the NFC, though, Detroit, clearly tough wherever they're playing, but at home because of the dome. Whoever gets the home field and whoever has home field, whether even if it's the 2-3 matchup in the second round, I mean, these are massive home field advantages, right? Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Buffalo, like that's the difference. Like you felt it today. And honestly, you felt it in that playoff game. So I bet on Buffalo last year in the playoffs because I'm like, this is a perfect spot for them. Halfway through, you're feeling good. In Kansas City, like you said, they just went on that Jordan Tiger-like run. Like, listen, you would be crazy to ever bet against Mahomes and Andy, but Belichick lost to Rex Ryan in a playoff game.
It happens.
He lost to Denver. You don't win it every year. Honestly, it's borderline impossible to win back to back. Aren't they the first team to do it since the early 2000s in New England?
Nobody's ever done it 3 times. And I grew up with the Steelers who had like 9 Hall of Famers, and eventually the Shula or the Raiders, somebody knocks you off. It's the way it works.
I mean, Walsh and Montana only went back to back one time. Hell, they only, I think, ever got back to back Super Bowls one time.
So congrats to the Buffalo Bills.